everyone, my name is Sierra Ladroma. I am the project manager for the Iowa Center's Women's Business Center. The Iowa Center Women's Business Center is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. After this event, all of you will receive an email with a form to complete. This information allows us to continue providing free educational programming for small business owners in Iowa. Throughout the webinar, feel free to use the chat box to join the conversation. Today, we're spending time with Chris Martin. Chris is a seasoned client success manager at Gain Compliance. He brings 7 years of customer success experience, 5 years of restaurant management experience, and more years than he's going to admit of retail experience to the table. Chris, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Yeah, Sierra, thanks so much for the introduction and the glowing review and reading of my profile. I appreciate that. So today we're going to be discussing, handling and preventing customer conflicts. And one of the key things for this is how you can delight your customers, especially in these unprecedented times. So I do have some slides and some other discussion points that I'll go through. My hope is to make this a little bit more engaging as well and have a little bit more of a free-flowing discussion at the end. So if you do have examples or questions or just anything that you want to discuss, feel free to put that in the chat box and we'll either address it at that time or we'll push it off to the end. If there's anything that deserves attention, Sarah will draw my attention to it and let me know that we need to hit the pause button for a second and hit up those talking points. So today, just a quick agenda. I'll go through a quick introduction, let you get to know me a little bit better. We'll hit on some of those big moments of customer conflict, talk about different ways you might be able to prevent the situations from even coming up or arising, some different ways to put your plan into action, and then of course leaving that end up for questions and open forum. I'm going to guess I'm not going to take up the whole hour of your time today, so we may get a couple minutes back onto your schedule, but that will also depend on how our open forum conversation goes at the end. So to give you just a brief introduction into who I am and put some pictures along with my face, my name is Chris Martin. As Sierra said, I'm a client services manager at Gain Compliance. I've been in the customer success world for 7 years now. Before that, I was in retail and of course the restaurant management experience as well. Just some visual cues as to who I am and what I like to do when I am not working. I have challenged myself to train for and complete Spartan races. I've done RAGBRAI. I enjoy riding my motorcycle. Got married here in Des Moines where I met my beautiful and wonderful and supporting wife. We have a fur baby up there in the corner. Her name is Emmy. She's a little teddy bear / Ewok. And then, of course, I love to cheer on the Iowa State Cyclones in all of their sports. So men's football, women's basketball, men's basketball, amazing cross-country team as well. So anything Iowa State, I celebrate that as well. So to get into the meat and potatoes of today's discussion is going to be, addressing the moments of customer conflict. With customer conflict, you always will have those difficult conversations, with customers. They can arise from incorrectly placed orders, a misunderstanding of your services, and you're going to run into all different types of customers, and they bring different things to the table as far as that conflict is. Some of the types of customers you may run into, in that bottom left-hand corner, we just have a little graph that I put down there. You have the competitive customers, the ones that are never wrong, always have to be right. Unfortunately, you may have the combatant customers. Those are some of the hardest to deal with because they want to essentially make it a fight and make it very difficult. Some customers have just reached a breaking point. They're fed up. Some may seem unreasonable in not wanting to work with you or negotiate with you. And then, in my mind, some of the best ones that you can work with, even though you may not see eye to eye, are going to be those ones that are cooperative you when those moments of customer conflict do arise within your day-to-day business. Now, before I get too far into it, I do want to go through and just ask a couple of questions here. So I have a couple of quick survey questions that Sierra is going to help me put up on the board here. And I believe the first one is going to be, have you or an employee of yours had a challenging customer interaction in this year? It's just a simple yes or no. So go ahead and we'll give you a little bit of time to throw your answers in there. I'm going to guess most of these are going to be yeses. Otherwise, you probably would not be attending our little discussion here today. All right. Yep. So does look like everybody has had a challenging customer interaction within the last couple of months here. Perfect. Now I am going to follow this up with a second one that will help lead some of the discussion as well. And that's, have you been engaged in a heated debate, AKA an argument, on a social media platform this year? This could be personal, it could be business. If you have not been in one, awesome. I'm so happy for you. You probably did not go into the comment section on any social media, which is a good thing. I really should learn that lesson a little bit better. All right, so about 50-50 on that one, which is perfect. So great, I appreciate you, answering those and providing that information for us. That'll just help me out a little bit as we continue to move forward. Now, if you want to open up a little bit on either of those, feel free to put in the situation in chat if you would like to, or just kind of give us a rundown on it. And that's something we could always use for the open discussion at the end. If it's something you do not want to share, you don't have to. 100% understand, and you don't need to be sharing that information with us as we move forward. Now, to go back to these moments of customer conflict, there's just a couple of ways that you can look at addressing those as you move forward and they do arise. The biggest thing that I found, and this is kind of spread throughout the internet world as well, if you just Google for addressing customer conflict or anything like that, is to stay calm and don't immediately react to the situation. The biggest thing that you can do is to use those timeouts and use silence as a benefit for you. So, if a customer conflict arises, first thing you want to do, stay calm, don't have knee-jerk reactions, don't react immediately, don't get baited into the situation, and let any sort of anger arise or let the customer see that. Use those timeouts and silences to your benefit. And if the conversation begins angry or if it gets angry, make sure as much as you can that you're not the one instituting that, but also those angry conversations, if at all possible, make those private and shelter not only your employees, but your other customers from those conversations as well. They do not need to get pulled into those if at all possible. Second is ask questions. You want to be able to fully understand the situation as much as possible. This will make the steps following this much easier. And when you ask those questions, make sure and listen to what the person is saying. You don't just want to ask the questions to go through them. You actually want to listen, because you can get a lot of information based on the tone that that particular person is using, and use that tone and that inflection to your advantage to see if there are other ways that you can resolve the situation and perhaps diffuse the situation as well. One of the biggest pieces of that is going to be the ability to recognize that there's going to be differing perspectives on the situation. So you may see the situation one way, the person that you're having the interaction with may see the situation differently and interpret it in a different way. You want to make sure that, if at all possible, you can understand where they're coming from and how they are seeing that perspective and how they have reached this point within the situation. The third one that I have listed here may be a little bit tougher, because it's not always apparent and requires some research. But you want to be able to know your rights as a business owner. You want to be able to know your customer rights as well, just so that you have an understanding of what can happen and what can't happen, and what footing everybody is standing on. If the situation did occur because of a mistake, it is human to err. Make sure to own up to your mistakes, or if it's something that occurred onto your team, make sure to own up to your team's mistakes as well. You didn't want this thing to happen, but it did. So make sure to own up to what happened. Don't be afraid to apologize at any time. It's always a good thing to be able to take the high road and be able to apologize when presented with any of these situations. So once you've gotten through these points, ideally you would have a grasp on what has occurred, why it has occurred, and start moving on to the next pieces of addressing these moments of conflict here. And the first one is, determining the cost value of what has occurred. Is there a need for any sort of reimbursement? Was an order put in incorrectly? Was a service not done to completion? Whatever your business is and whatever the service that was being offered, essentially the product, determine the cost, determine the value, and then from there be able to determine what value was lost within this interaction and how it can be redeemed and made right. Hopefully the conversation is still calm and everybody is working accordingly and moving forward, and this would allow you to go on to negotiate a resolution. In the perfect world, the resolution would be beneficial to both parties. If an order was messed up, you can own the order, you can replace it, and then rest assured with a customer that you'll do better on the next one, and that you'll do everything you can to make sure that this type of thing does not happen moving forward. Don't be afraid to get creative with your resolutions. If you need to replace a pizza because it had the wrong toppings on it, go above and beyond. Don't just replace the pizza, but try and make something special and catered to the customer. Perhaps you can throw in some additional product. Perhaps you can offer to cater a birthday party down the road if you know the customer that well and something is coming up that way. Just get creative with your solutions and do whatever you can to honor that and make the situation a positive one. And then of course set expectations. Just because this has occurred one time, if it's somebody that unfortunately, some people do try to take advantage of the system and become repeat offenders in some certain ways. If you give them leniency on some certain rules or policies that you have in place where, going back in the day, if you think about watching the movies and all of the pizza delivery services had, if you get your pizza in more than 30 minutes, your next one's going to be free, or that one is going to be free. And so, on like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the one I go back to. The guy was delivering to a grate in the middle of the road and he was 1 minute late. So they negotiated for a free pizza. And that is something that somebody could easily take advantage of if they know they live on the outside of your delivery zone and they want to keep pressing you because every time your delivery is 1 or 2 minutes late, you may need to renegotiate with that customer and let them know, be like, hey, it's going to be a 45-minute delivery window, not a 30-minute delivery window. Now, pretty much everybody has gotten rid of that 30 minutes or less stigma. But if you are doing something where perhaps you're setting up a time with a customer and you're like, hey, the window of time that we'll be there to perform the service is going to be between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Make sure you are there between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. As always, when you've come to a resolution, make sure to thank your customer. Every interaction that you do have is a learning experience. Even the most difficult and challenging will offer insight on how you can be better and also how you can prevent this from happening again. When I first was introduced to restaurant management and was given my first store, we had a regular customer and his wife that came in, every once in a while, and they would typically order the same item and just be served, and we all knew their order. They all knew what they wanted. So I had gotten in the habit of, once I saw them come in the door, I would start prepping their order, and then I would take it out to them shortly thereafter. Well, one day when I did that, they decided that they wanted to change up their order. So instead of ordering their typical Supreme pizza, they decided that they wanted to go with a meat lovers. And so I took out the Supreme pizza. I was all proud of myself. I was like, hey, I have your order here. You guys are ready to go. And I got to the table, and this lovely, lovely older couple looked up at me with the sweetest eyes, and like, this is not the pizza we wanted today. So I, dejected, had to turn around and go back to the kitchen and have them remake the pizza that they actually wanted. Now, in this case, the customer was already a loyal customer. They had somebody that had been there, but they very easily could have turned very sour on me and let me know that they weren't satisfied and walked out and went to a different restaurant for the rest of their business moving forward. So in that case, it fortunately was not the most difficult or challenging, but it was definitely one of the most embarrassing experiences that I had ever had in that regard. But at the end, I thanked them. I thanked them for their honesty. I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of, and that moving forward, I would communicate with them and actually take their order before I sat them and presumed a lot of things that weren't actually true for that particular interaction. And then the last one, if you can at all, make sure to follow up with the customer or the person that you had the interaction with to make sure that they are satisfied and were satisfied with the resolution. And that way you can have that closure with them, but then also make sure that they're going to come back and hopefully allow you to continue the relationship with them and continue to service them as a customer. So those are some of the big ones and some of the high points, when it comes to addressing those moments of customer conflict. What I'll look at now is some of the information on perhaps being able to prevent these situations from even arising in the first place. Some of this will be, a little bit, a lot of people will say common sense, but in a lot of times common sense isn't all that common. So you want to make sure to be as clear and concise on what you are providing to a customer and what you expect from them. That can be the side of the coin that a lot of people won't address because it may be assumed what you should expect from a consumer. But in some cases, you are better off to lay that out to let them know what kind of behavior you would expect from them and what's needed from them to successfully complete on whatever service you are providing. So if you're providing a service, leave as little room as possible for interpretation if you can. Also, don't overpromise and then underdeliver. That goes back to, if you say you're going to be there between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m., be there between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. And if you can narrow it down even further and let them know, hey, I'm leaving my previous, appointment. I will be there at 3:30. I will see you in 25 minutes. That goes a long way within building the trust for that customer. My wife is a stickler for people being on time, and especially if they are performing a service for us. The example I'm going to use here is something that we experienced earlier in the spring. So luckily, we had some work that we needed to get done pre-derecho that involved cutting down some trees and taking care of that. So the service we signed up for was, we wanted somebody to cut down our tree and take care of that. When we spoke with them, they let us know that cutting and the harvesting of the tree is included. However, if we want it hauled away and disposed, that was going to be an additional charge. If we wanted the stump ground down, that was going to be an additional charge. If we wanted the hole filled back in from the stump, that was going to be additional charge. And that if we wanted them to go, all out VIP package and reseed everything for our lawn, that was also going to be an additional charge. Now, going into it, I don't know a lot about the tree trimming service or anything like that. I may have just assumed that some of these things would have been included. Honestly, when I first looked into it, I didn't realize that stump grinding was going to be an optional charge. I thought they just took care of it for me. So having that conversation and them laying that out for me was extremely beneficial and prevented me from making any assumptions and then getting angry with them when they came to do the service and left and there was still a stump in my yard. So you want to be as clear and concise as you can with the services that you are providing. If there are any options or any extras or any assumptions that can be made by a customer or that have been made by previous customers, make sure that you are addressing those situations as you move forward to provide as little room for error and confusion as possible. Now, in some cases, the service or product that you offer may not be a fit for everyone. For you, it may just be something that is common knowledge for your industry. So you may know it, but your consumers may not know that. The biggest thing that I would address here is do not make assumptions on this. When somebody reaches out to you about potentially enlisting you for your particular service or purchasing your product, make sure to have a conversation and ask the proper questions, because you don't want to have that be the reason that you have a angry or conflicted customer. In retail, and oftentimes this is referred to as solution selling. Essentially, you ask the questions, you have the conversation, and you make sure that the product and solution that you offer fits their particular needs. In most cases, there isn't going to be much negative feedback if you spell it out and lay it out for a customer that, the solution or product that you offer is not going to be the proper fit for them. If you try to sell them that's not a fit, it's going to be a much bigger headache down the road, because the consumer is going to get frustrated, you're going to get frustrated, and it's just not going to be a good relationship moving forward, which can then negatively impact the rest of your business, because customers are much more likely to post negative reviews unprompted than they are to post positive reviews. To get positive reviews, you need to work for it. You need to talk with your customers. You need to ask them to go out to Google and post reviews for you. You need to ask them to give you 5 stars on the survey that you're going to send out. You need to ask for the positive reviews, because they're not going to come in as frequently than unprompted than the negative reviews. It's unfortunate that it's that way, but currently over the past decade or so, that's really been the way of the world when it comes to eliciting those responses. So do not make assumptions. Know that your product or service may not be a fit for everyone. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's not going to work out for you very well in the long run. So some examples that I just threw out here. Nebraska, in the last couple of years, they updated their slogan, and it's now Nebraska, honestly, is not for everyone. From their tourism industry, they're throwing this out there. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's self-deprecating. They know that in a lot of cases, when people are traveling through Nebraska, it's just a flat state that they unfortunately have to go through or go across if they want to get to Colorado. But the tourism board has taken that tongue-in-cheek, and they've been able to twist it and been able to use it to showcase some of the unique aspects and some of the unique places within Nebraska to put a positive spin on them. One of the big things is they do a thing called tanking. I did not know this until I started doing research for this presentation, but essentially that's where they take large cattle tanks, the steel ones that most farmers would use to put water in, but instead they put it on a river, they put 6 people in them, and they throw a cooler in the middle of it, and they float down the river. And it's something that's unique to Nebraska because they have a lot of cattle tanks. They have a fair amount of people, And they also have a lot of people that apparently want to go down the river in a cattle tank and drink some beverages. So that's a spin that they've put and been able to showcase that, Nebraska, maybe it's not for everyone, but we do have some activities that a lot of people would enjoy if they would just give us a chance. The second example that I put down here is Raygun, which is near and dear to many of the great people of Des Moines. It's a local business that has grown, and they've done it their own way. They've been mostly unapologetic about the way that they have run their business. And they've also got some viewpoints out there that some could see as being very one-sided, but they've been able to stick to those, draw the customer base that they want to draw, and have had that benefit of being able to not necessarily have to cater to everybody, and they're okay with it. They know their audience, they know who they want to sell to, they know who's going to come into their store and purchase their goods, and they go for it, and they're 100% on that. And they're very transparent about it as well. If you go to their website or go to their store or anything like that, they're very transparent about all of their policies and the way they feel about the world and how they are running their business. So that's the third one that I have listed here. Be honest and forthright. Within your business, you want to be honest, you want to be forthright with your customers. If you're not a fit, you want to make sure that you let them know, hey, I don't think we're a good fit, and give them the reasons why. But at the same time, you do need to toe the line of being inclusive and being accessible to as many customers as possible, because there are rights, there are laws out there that prohibit you from doing some of those activities that would make you not accessible. So you do want to make sure that you know what those are and that you're within your rights when you're making those decisions. If confusion does arise, make sure to empathize with them, monitor the situation, and do what you can to de-escalate the situation, as you do not want to go the other route and push the buttons and lead yourself into trouble moving forward. Now, as I mentioned earlier, ask for customer feedback. If it's a positive interaction, prompt that customer to provide you with some sort of feedback, whether that's sending a survey. You could even go out and call your customers after the interaction. Encourage social media reviews. Get all the feedback that you can. If you elicit the feedback, you'll receive more positive feedback than any other sort of feedback, as long as you are doing good by your customers. And that leads me to the last one I have listed here. Do unto others, remember the golden rule. You want to make sure that you take care of the customers and that you treat them the same way that you would expect to be treated if the roles were reversed and flipped. Now, this can be tough when you're dealing with a combatant customer or somebody that is already agitated and irritated, and they are no longer remembering the golden rule. But you need to remember the golden rule, and just remember that you want to take care of it and maintain a positive situation, and that in many cases, this is your livelihood. So you want to make sure that everybody has as positive experience as possible with you, either in your business, with your customer base, or any of the services that you do provide. So those are the big ones that I wanted to cover from preventing the situation from coming up in the first place. Now, in some cases, and a lot of times, you're going to have to prepare yourself to put these plans into action, and or just find a starting point somewhere as you move forward. And to start that, really the first step is to research and document. If you have policies, make sure they're written down, make sure they're documented, and make sure that you revisit them as often as needed. Right now, you can kind of look at the current state of social media for lessons on what to do, and especially for lessons on what not to do to maintain a solid and good customer base. Empower yourself and your employees to make those tough decisions. However, you need to understand the benefits and consequences associated with making those decisions. Now, one of the ones that I like to look at is, how are you positively impacting the community around you? And you can look very small. How are you working with your customers? How are you working with your employees? How are you working and positively impacting just the neighborhood that you are in? And then start to, look beyond that. Is your impact going into the community? Is it going into the city at large? Is it going into the county, the state, the nation? What kind of impact are you having? And you may not even know the impact until you really start to dig into it and start to research how you are impacting and affecting people. And this is where those customer feedback surveys or listing that customer feedback can help you out greatly, so that you know who you're impacting and how far your reach is. And make sure to share these positive stories. If you've got great referrals, if you've got those great reviews on Google, make sure that they're getting shared in a public forum. And if you need to, reach out to your support system for assistance. We have a lot of great small business resources around the Des Moines area. We have the Iowa Center that we're working with here. We have a ton of small business resources out there in Des Moines and any of the smaller communities surrounding us. They all have very tight-knit small business communities. Reach out to those resources, use the support system around you to help you out. See what they're doing. They might have ideas or things that they've been doing that could very easily be pivoted for your business model. The second piece of that is training and maybe even role playing some of those situations out to make sure that your staff is aware. So if you have policies in place, make sure that your employees know what those policies are and where to find them. So if they're documented on your website, if they're documented on a piece of paper in the office in the back room under 3 folders, just make sure that they know where they're at. As uncomfortable as it is, role play some of these situations. If you know that you've had specific customer interactions, or some policy or something that you have in place is prone to elicit a response, and you know what that response typically is, make sure that your employees know what that is. They know how to identify it and they know how to respond to it. It's not always role play where you get to act as an angry customer and you have to have your employee try to diffuse the situation. It could be as simple as watching some of the videos that are out there and going through and just breaking down that video by the key moments that occurred. So, what led to this response? Is there a way that could have been diffused without letting the customer get to the next stage or get combatant or get angry or anything like that? So break down the videos step by step and go through those so they can help identify those key moments where things could go off the rails or they could be brought back to a positive resolution. And just make sure that they're able to handle those uncomfortable situations and have those difficult conversations, and that they're able to do it in the right way. And that leads me to the next piece. Be on the lookout for those coachable moments. If a coachable moment does arise, make sure that you coach it as soon as possible. There are as many, if not more, coachable moments in a positive interaction than there are in a negative. So whenever you're looking at those, it's kind of breaking down game film for a football game. There's as many teachable moments in a game that you win than there are as a game that you lose. You just have to be able to identify them and make sure that you are coaching on them in the proper way. So remain positive when you're providing the feedback, and there's always going to be room for improvement. And as humans, we're constantly learning. You can teach an old dog new tricks as long as you know how to teach them the tricks. So just some additional things that I thought of as I was putting all of this together. When I was referring back to, if you have policies, make sure they're documented. You want to make sure that they are enforced in your place of business. So know your rights and know the rights of your customers when you're developing those policies. And if you're not sure, make sure to seek out the proper resource so you don't institute something that is incorrect or not within the boundaries of law or anything like that. Depending on your type of business, just some things to think about. Is there a return or exchange policy on your goods if you're selling anything like that? Is there a product or service warranty, either in the service you're providing or the product that you are providing? How do you handle order errors or any employee mistakes? So you want to make sure that those policies are in place so that everybody knows how to properly handle those types of situations. As I mentioned earlier, are your policies documented? If they are, make sure that everybody knows where to locate them. And if an issue arises, who should the customer contact and what's the best contact method? So if you're providing a service and the customer notices something or isn't 100% happy down the road, who do they reach out to and what's the best contact method for them to provide that follow-up information or to alert you of an issue with the service or product that you provided? And then just one to think about, especially in today's day and age, do you need a privacy policy? How are you handling the customer data that you gather? Especially, it's referred to as PII, but personally identifiable information. So if you're gathering information from a customer, like their name, email address, phone number, anything else that goes beyond that you may need, social security number, billing information, anything like that, how is that handled, how is it stored, and how is it secure? Because those are the types of things that you want to make sure you have shored up in order to prevent any issues in that regard. Now, one of the biggest things that I was thinking about as I was putting together this overview is, how do you handle social media? I'm not a social media expert or maven by any means, but a couple of key things that you can think about and remember, especially if you get into one of those heated debates within social media, the internet never forgets. If there's one thing that we can prove, it's that the internet never forgets. In the political world now, there's always a tweet. If you look at it, anything that anybody says, it seems like they've tweeted either for it or against it in a previous world before they're in their current role. So the internet never forgets, and it seems like there's always a tweet for that when you put your public opinions out there. If you are publicly sharing your opinions, especially on strongly contested subjects, once again, I can't reiterate this enough, but know your rights. If at all possible, separate business and personal. In some cases, if you're still a very small business, that becomes more and more difficult. So you want to be very careful the way that you interact with any customers or potential customers in social media on any of those platforms, because it can very quickly become tied back to your personal side, and some not so positive things have happened because of that, unfortunately. If you are publicly sharing your opinions, be prepared for the negative reactions and know and have a plan on how to handle these reactions. If you are sharing your opinions out there, it's almost a given that somebody's going to have a reaction opposite of your view. As right now we are in a very divisive time, and there's a lot of opinions that unfortunately don't line up, and people are very keen on letting you know what their opinion is, right, wrong, or indifferent. In every case that you can, social media should be used as a platform for you to advertise and promote your business growth and the good things that you are doing within the community. Ideally, it will not be used in the negative connotation. In some cases, it unfortunately does, but it can be a very powerful tool to help you grow your business and be used as a rallying cry to help you, especially in some unprecedented times as we're going through now. It's more important than ever to make sure that our local businesses are taken care of, and that we are locked arm in arm and making a positive impact locally and taking care of one another. The great thing about social media is you can be very creative on it, but do your best not to be divisive. Make sure that you're inclusive, that you can include everybody as much as you can, but use the outlets to be creative and continue to drive your business. A couple of things that I wanted to cover here is in reference to policies, do you need to have a social media policy for your company and for your employees? Ideally, you do not, because people will use it in the way that it's intended as a positive outlet to drive support and to drive additional business your way. But in some cases, either because of things that have happened before, or if you're in a business or offer a service that requires it, make sure that you have a social media policy and that it's adhered to. In driving it back to everything that I like to talk about for the good of the community is how are you using social media to display the good job that you are doing for the community? So if you're giving back, how are you spreading the message on that? If you are wanting people to shop local, how are you bringing them to you for your service as opposed to going to a national brand, or instead of picking something up at Walmart or Target, how about they come to you for something that's been handmade and custom for your needs? Just using social media for that positive outlet and the advertising and the information that you can spread to drive business to you and to be a good local provider within your community. So those are the big pieces that I wanted to cover today in our little overview here. So if there is additional points, discussion, questions, anything that you do have, feel free to put those in the chat. Sierra, if there's anything that you have, I think you said you may have something to have me address more, let me know and I'll just open it up.
Chris, thanks so much. That was really also helpful. There were times where I wanted to ask a question, but you just dove right into it in the next topic. So it was perfect. I do have some questions that came up. One of them being, how do you manage endorsements or support from groups that you absolutely don't want to be associated with?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a good one. I wanted to include more information about, separating your personal values from your business values and, how you can cross that road and deal with those. I mean, ideally in that situation, you have to stay true to yourself in that regard. If somebody either wants you to endorse them and you don't want to, I mean, it's your business, it's your choice. You don't have to endorse them. Measure the cost benefit analysis of it. If you do go down that road, what are the positives of it? What are the negatives of it? If the negatives outweigh the positives, I mean, that's absolutely a relationship that you can't start and you can't build. If it's better to just remain silent and neutral on the issue, remain silent and neutral. If they're looking for an answer and they're not going to take no, then, sometimes you just have to stick with your gut and give them the no. The things that come up in my mind and some of the examples are, when you're looking at the old mob movies and those types of things, where they're going to make you a deal, and if you don't accept the deal, they're going to make you take the deal either way. Hopefully it's nothing like that, and real life does not emulate the movies in that particular case. But go with your gut, do the benefits, positives versus negatives, know your legal rights as well. If you say no, then make sure that you can back up the no and protect yourself from your decision if that's what you choose to do. And if it's a subject that business-wise you need to remain silent on it. And in your personal life, you can make those endorsements and make those decisions, but just make sure that you're ready to live with those. And in today's day and age, it's tougher than ever, especially, 3 weeks until an election. Everybody's all over the board. Those endorsements are coming from all over the place. So protect yourself, do what's best for you and for your business, and just know your rights is the biggest thing I can think of on that.
Perfect. The last question I have is, you mentioned Raygun, and they are incredible. I don't know who doesn't know about them in the Des Moines area, but they do really stick to their values. And I feel like, though, when someone, especially a small business owner, has a conflict and someone is questioning the values that they post about, or they, are outwardly having conversations about, what are some ways that a small business owner can get through that, maybe questioning if they did the right thing? Just kind of that insecurity of, oh no, I'm going to lose these customers and these supporters. How and how would a small business owner kind of support themselves and their team members through that?
Yeah, I mean, with that one, it's having your values in alignment, I would say. And if you are somebody that, has a team and has employees, do those employees share your values and have the same alignment with you? And if they don't, are they still the right fit? And if your values don't line up necessarily with everybody, are you prepared to lose that business if needed? Like I mentioned, Raygun, they're very much okay with who they are. They've built up enough support that they know they can put out those t-shirts and put out those beliefs, and everybody knows where they stand on certain subjects, and they get the support that they need from those particular people. People that are on the other side of it, they could create a business and do the exact same thing as Raygun, but be on the complete other side of the fence and push t-shirts and push things that are on the other side of it. And I'm sure there are businesses that are out there. I don't know of them offhand, but at the same time, my personal beliefs align more with Raygun than they would on the other side of the fence. So that's kind of where I would lie on that. But the toughest thing is, you need to be true to yourself. You need to be true to your core values, your core business, and your core beliefs. And if you have the faith that your customers and the customers that you have are going to stick with you, and they have those same values and beliefs, then feel free to make some of those decisions. If it's something where you need to toe the line a little bit more and not make those public statements and maybe be a little bit more in the middle, then perhaps that's something that you do until you either have the clout to go off on your own and continue following your values and beliefs, or not, and you kind of have to live with the decisions that you make in that regard. And if it's something that you believe in strong enough, then you just have to go with it.
I think it's something to also realize where you might lose supporters or followers, but at the same time, you would be gaining more for sticking to your values. Yeah, that's really something. Thank you. Chris, I think you've answered all the questions that I've had, but I do, if there's time and if you're open to it, I do have a quick plug for our upcoming programs at the Iowa Center.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Perfect. So many of you have heard of our Dream Builder program, and I am so excited to share we've created a new program called Dream Maker. This program is for the entrepreneur that's been in business for a couple to a few years now and is looking to grow after creating a foundation. This is a 6-week deep dive virtual course. I do want to encourage everyone to visit our website to see the upcoming courses, programs, and offerings that we have for entrepreneurs. If any of them sound interesting to you and you wonder if that would be a good fit for you and your business, we would love to chat more about it. So please don't hesitate to reach out. That was my plug. We have a lot of really great things coming up with Iowa Center, and I hope everyone gets a chance to see what those are.
Yes, absolutely. Take part in all of those that you can, and any of them that are relevant to you, and maybe some that may not seem relevant to you, because you'll never know what you may learn from them. Sierra, thanks for the opportunity to present on this subject. I know there might have been some tangents in there, but it's broad ranging, and it's tumultuous times that we're in right now. So there's a lot to talk about.
Exactly. Chris, thanks again for your time. I hope you have a great week.
Yes, you as well. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.